That lens you just grabbed to go out shooting with, it will determine the mood and the style of your photo shoot. Focal length matters. What's going on, everyone? This is Jerry with CaptureCraft, and as you guessed it, today we're talking about focal lengths. Let's jump right in. We all know that to get a great picture, you got to have a great camera, right? Or is it to get a great picture, you have to have a great lens? Or is it a combination of the two? Well, today we are going to jump into some of the most common focal length ranges that probably came with your new camera, somewhere between 18 millimeter up to 300 millimeter. We're going to start off in the middle, in what they call the normal focal length range, the 35 to 50, 35 to 70, somewhere right in that middle focal length range. And they call it normal because it's kind of as close to what the human eye sees in the camera. This is all based on a 35 millimeter sensor, a full frame sensor. So those are going to be the lenses that you see a lot of photographers use for like street photography, kind of running and gunning. 35 millimeter is probably one of my favorite lenses to use. It's light. I have a 35 millimeter prime that I'm filming this with right now, and I could take it everywhere. Last year I went on a trip to Hawaii, and instead of packing a big old long telephoto lens to get out there and bring things just off in the distance up close to me, I just used my 35 millimeter. Why? Because it's light, because it's really, really close to what the human eye sees, and it challenged me to capture things in a way that I normally wouldn't do it. If I wanted to get close, I had to physically get close. If I needed to back up, obviously I had to do the opposite and get away from the image. It let me tell the story and present the mood almost exactly, or as close to exactly how I experienced it when I was there. I thought that was a good test for me. I had fun doing it, and I felt like I got some really great shots out of it. Check them out. All right, so back to focal lengths. If you bought a camera, it probably came with something along the lines of a 24 or maybe 28 millimeter to 70 millimeter. That's going to be a good little bit of wide, little bit of standard, kind of your general walking around lens, covers a lot of everything. Most photographers I know, they live with their 24-70 on their camera when they're running and gunning because it's such a diverse lens that it just covers everything, right? And there's no coincidence that you've seen these focal lengths before. You've seen them in action. Because on the back of your cell phone, a lot of times, those camera lenses there are right in that middle range. It covers a little bit of wide, a little bit of telephoto. Some of the fancier cameras have a little bit longer reach, and then the ultra wide to really get more in, but focal length matters. The one you choose for the image is going to tell the story. So I took a few images with the 24-70 lens, which is my widest lens that I have, other than an 18 millimeter prime, but for this purpose, the widest lens that I have is going to be the 24, so I took an image at 24, 50, and 70, just to compare how they look. These are all taken from the exact same position with the exact same camera settings, but each of them have their own different style and vibe and feel to them, right? You can see how on the wider end, you can see a lot more stuff in the room. Not necessarily that it's a better picture, but it opens things up. Used in the right situation, it's the perfect lens for the job. We dive in a lot closer to the face, and it starts looking more like a portrait, more pleasing of an image. Okay, We talked about wide, we talked about the normal. What we haven't talked about is telephotos. Your telephoto lenses are going to be the ones you typically use in portraits, wildlife photography, covering sports, covering action. If you're a secret agent and you're covering somebody across the park doing some nefarious deeds, you're gonna have a big old long telephoto. Telephoto lenses brings the things up close and personal that you can't get up close and personal with, right? So they break down to a couple of different categories. Like your 85s to 135s are gonna be your portrait telephoto lenses. 135 to 300, that's just going to be the telephoto or like the mid telephoto. If the 85 to 135 was your short telephoto, 135 to 200, 300 is going to be your telephoto. And then your long ones are going to be your ultra telephotos. Those are the ones you see at like sporting events, or that's pretty much all I can think of off the top of my head. Is you see them at a lot of sporting events or paparazzi maybe. See somebody famous getting off a plane and you got 20,000 paparazzi waiting to see, I don't know, somebody get off a plane and waltz on down, and they got those long wide camera lens, and they can do that. Or maybe sometimes with super telephotos, you'll see wildlife photography. A lot of Nat Geo stuff is shot with those super long lenses. They're really cool, and they bring you so up close and personal with the thing that you never would get to experience that close, right? So let's talk about it. Okay, so we're talking about telephoto and the portrait telephoto lens. The 85 to 135s, right? So remember our wide angle lenses? Just as a comparison, here are some portrait shots taken with 24 on up to 135. Pay attention to the face. In the wide lens, you can see how anything that's close to the lens is super distorted. My friend here is a super handsome guy, but he looks silly when shot with a 24 millimeter. And as we get into the longer focal lengths, you can see that it starts to compress his face. So things aren't distorted proportionately from front to back. Things look more natural, more pleasing, more flattering to your subject. If that subject's a human being, you can almost guarantee they're gonna look better shot with a mid-range telephoto lens than if you get up close and personal and shoot them with a wide lens. Now, rules are meant to be broken, right? And you can use your wide lens to do some creative things. It distorts, it creates some crazy images when used in a creative way. And that could be the situation you want to do. This guy here, his name's Eric. In addition to being several things, he's also a comedian. So maybe that 24 millimeter shot where he looks a little silly works fine for him. But if he was a ballerina or dudes called ballerinas? What do they call it? If he was a if he was a ballet performer or a opera singer or a serious drama actor, he wouldn't want to go give those headshots at the 24 millimeter range because he would look silly. But as a comedian, that may work to his advantage, right? So creative, you knowing what focal length to grab to convey the emotion, the feeling, the vision that you have in mind is key. Here's a tip too. If you're shooting full frame, you can do a couple of things to add a little extra reach to that lens. So on a 35 millimeter sensor, at least for Sony, I think Canon may be the same, but the crop sensors on there, you may have seen in your settings where you can go from full frame to APS-C or something along those lines. And that smaller sensor area crops in with a crop factor of like 1.4 to 1.6. What does that mean? That means if you take your 300 millimeter lens and you switch to your APS-C sensor, yes, you're gonna have less resolution, but you're gonna have longer reach for that lens. If you're shooting with something like the camera I'm recording on now, the Sony A7R5, it's a 61 megapixel camera. And I think when I crop it down to the APS-C, it goes down to maybe like 33 or something like that. I'll have to look it up for sure. But a 33 megapixel image on a camera in RAW, that's a lot of detail. You can recover a lot with that. So that's my tip. If you think it's dumb, let me know. Drop it in the comments. If you think it's cool, let me know. Drop it in the comments. Did you know that? Did you know that if you dropped it to the the APS-C mode or the crop sensor mode, you'd get a little extra reach? Let me know. Anyhow, back to our focal lengths. Each one of these are gonna have their quirks. The wide ones are gonna have distortion, especially as you get out to the edges of the glass. There is some glass made there when the wide ones that are, I think they call it rectilinear, and it'll keep the things that are straight up and down, straight up and down. You won't see a lot of things bowing and distorting on the edges of them because the lens was designed to be square and flush. That's a specialty thing. Typically, with most lenses that you get, you're gonna have a little distortion. As I mentioned before, that's the part of the story that you're telling. If you wanted to have that distorted image, if you're doing something that's needs to be different or strange or exaggerated, you may want to leave that distortion in there. But if you're doing something that's like straight up and down, real estate, something like that, it's an easy fix. You hop into Lightroom, you hit the lens correction feature in there, and it takes your wonky curved image to a nice and square image, and everything's all good. Nobody cares, no big deal. Everything's fixed, and it's not that big of a deal. When you get into your mid-range or normal focal length range, it's gonna have a few concerns as well, right? So you're probably not gonna have enough reach to get anything far away. You're gonna have to foot focus, and what that is, just walking back and forward to get to your subject, or you may not have enough width to get wide. So those are great for street photography if you're just walking around capturing the moment, kind of documenting your day, posting things for Instagram. Those are great focal lengths for that. You know, they have their shortcomings. Like I said, you can't really get long and you can't really get wide, but just in the moment, it's a great lens for capturing in the moment type stuff. As you get longer, the longer the lens, the more narrow the focus is gonna be. So you're looking through your viewfinder and you're looking on the back of your screen, and you're gonna see that image just moving around like crazy if you're trying to hold that lens in your hand. That's the drawback of a long lens. To combat that, I know this is a shorty, but usually I'm like right up under the bottom here with a nice firm grip. Other hand kind of cupping itself, and I pull it up close. Almost exclusively use the viewfinder to shoot, unless it's a weird angle I can't get to it, because I can pull my arms in close, get it close to my body, and kind of stabilize it a little bit more than just holding it out in front of me, looking at the back of the screen. If you're shooting with a long lens, it's always good to have a tripod if you can, or maybe like a sandbag or a backpack or something you can put your camera on and steady it to shoot that thing. But pros and cons. Do you want to catch that bird that's, 2 football fields away? Sure, you're gonna need a long lens, but you're gonna need to stabilize it. Do you want to catch this whole wide cast of your favorite play that's in a community theater and you can only get 10 feet away from them? Sure, that's fine. You're gonna have to use your widest lens, and it may have some distortion, but pros and cons in each of them. They all have their places. They all serve their purpose. It's just which one do you use and when. All right, so what do? We got new things to practice. We got new things to add to our routine, to our bite-sized learning, right? Here he is, folks. Jerry's talking about bite-sized learning, but if you put just a few minutes in a day or an hour in a week or something like that, it's better than not doing anything at all. You're gonna learn more stuff. If you're shooting out to be an expert photography, you're probably not watching this. You're probably enrolled in some highfalutin course in some highfalutin school with some highfalutin professor telling you the same thing I'm telling you. However, you get a piece of paper that says, I'm official. You leave there, and I'm just going to say, go out and practice. Grab your portrait lens. Find yourself, your favorite pet, your favorite stuffed animal, a vase, if you're fancy, maybe a vase of flowers. Use that lens, use that wide aperture, isolate that subject, get that gooey background going. Grab your whiteboard, head to the park, head out into the city, capture some structures, do some mock real estate shots inside your house. Get your long lens out, do some birding, my favorite things to do. So watch my fine feathered friends, and I wouldn't be able to do it without a long lens. And after you've done all that, break the rules. Shoot some portraits with your telephoto, or try to cover a crowd of people with your telephoto. See what kind of limitations and drawbacks you get doing that. Playing around with your lenses help you tell a story, and knowing which one to grab will help you tell it better. Thank you for sticking around if you did. I appreciate it. You're the best part of this whole situation. And even if it's just one person watching, I still would take the time because I enjoy doing it. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bells, share it, save it, send it to your friends, send it to your grandma. She probably wants to know how to take some cool pictures. She's a cool lady, right? Once again, I'm Jerry with CaptureCraft. I thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.